Okay, that's the contract you sign. You sign a blank check. But the deal is that if you do get hurt, you get compensated for your injuries. And they can be substantial. The person who can analyze basically your injuries and the causation, because remember, you get injured, you have to show that there's a causation with the damages that you suffer. This gentleman, 24 years in the Air Force, and then worked 10 years for the VA. He's basically analyzed over 5,500 cases. When I say expert, he is the expert, okay? So I'm just telling you, it's off the charts. He can analyze it upside, downside, sideways, and he can look at it. He's got calibrated eyeballs. You know, like the Terminator, when you look through, he's got calibrated. He can look at stuff and make it happen. Anyways, with no further ado, please give David Kruger a big skyline welcome.
Give that to Harry. It's funny, I was just talking to Michael Gerchiak back there, and I like how Craig makes the analogy that I'm the Terminator, because I told Michael that I was Rain Man. Much like being Terminator better. But my name is David Kruger, and like Craig said, I'm retired Air Force, 24 years, did 15 years on the enlisted side, then got my commission through officer training school, and was a communications officer for the rest of my career. Glad to be here. I appreciate the invitation. Today, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the 10,000, 20,000 foot view of what's going on at the VA. The VA, you know, it's charged to do a lot. You know, it's got a lot of mission to cover, and they do their best, but their best is woefully inadequate. Okay, so why are you here? You're here because you want to find out what VA benefits are out there, especially since the PAC Act has been passed and well, you know, on its way. You know, what benefits are out there? What are you eligible for? You're not sure if you've been erroneously denied benefits or undervaluated for your claims. I can tell you, and I was sharing some stories with Michael in the back before we started. I would say probably 70 to 80% of the clients that I bring on who they don't know that they were under-evaluated. They don't know that they were turned down erroneously. So you don't know what you don't know, right? Like the whole Rumsfeld said. So it's difficult. So unless you have access to those records in a trained eye, you won't know. So and this. It's sad because people are denied benefits that they should have been earning for decades. Okay, which is why when we get involved and when their claims, they get huge payouts because oftentimes it's decades worth of benefits. And then you want to find out how to file an effective claim. I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you how to do it on your own. We also are available to help, but you know, this isn't anything that you can do on your own. But there's a lot of moving parts to it. Okay, so like I said, I'm a 24-year veteran, 10 years at the VA, well over 5,000 claims rated. I worked about, I'd say the last 5-6 years, I worked about 4,000 hours of overtime at the VA because we had this big backlog, and we got it down to a manageable level. And then with the PAC Act, they got a big backlog. All right, so we're all warriors in here, right? So I like Sun Tzu, some good pieces of advice in Sun Tzu. This is something that this is the mindset you have to have when you're dealing with the VA. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. If you go into your claim with all the evidence you need and you submit it on time, or really is no time limit for originals or initials. But if you give them everything they need, there's probably a 60% chance they're going to get it right. Okay, 60. Victorious warriors win first, then go to war. Well, defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. Again, if you're not going into it complete, I think it was, I want to say it was General Schwarzkopf back during Desert Storm. You know, he's like, we need to go into the Middle East with overwhelming numbers, just absolutely overwhelming. And that's our philosophy too, is go in with overwhelming evidence. You write it up, you point it out exactly, so they at least get 60% of it right. Exactly. And then never venture, never win. I can't begin to tell you how many people do, either a tour of duty, 4 years, or they do a full career, and they never file a claim for VA benefits, okay? Which is amazing to me. My next door neighbor is a prime example. He's got, he was lieutenant commander in the Navy, excuse me. He has 3 kids. His one daughter did go to school in state, and I'm talking to him, I'm like, look, I go, all I gotta do is get you hooked up for a SCAR. A SCAR. You don't even have to get paid by the VA. Just get hooked up for a SCAR, and you can send your kid to California State College for free. Okay, you're just gonna pay for the room and board. Still would not do it. Yes, sir.
I've personally been witnesses where people have spent 20 years, 30 years in the military, and they, whenever I got sick in the military, I went to medical, they gave me Motrin, they gave me Tylenol, and I went back to work, so I'm fine.
Yeah.
But then when you get out and you start doing your medical evaluation, you realize over the last 20, 30 years while you was in, there's cases, there are medical conditions worsened, there are things that you didn't know about that has transpired over the last 20, 30 years. You only realize that until you got out.
Yes, and a lot of people in the VA also, they think, okay, well, I can't claim that because it's not in my medical records. And the VA will say, well, you can't claim that because it's not in your medical records. They are wrong. Okay, you can claim anything, even if it's not in your medical records. The catch is that you have to get a medical you have to get a medical opinion that links your current condition to an in-service event, disease, or illness, okay? So, you might, for instance, there's an expert opinion. An expert opinion, exactly. And the VA relies heavily on what the experts say, okay? So it's really important to get those medical justice letters. Okay, so what benefits are out there? The big one, the one that we're going to be talking about mostly today is compensation. There's several types of compensation that people can get, but we'll deal with those in slides coming up. Healthcare, though, is also another big one. I cannot tell you how important that is. I personally get all my healthcare through the VA. I had a heart attack last May, and it didn't hurt, oddly. And I was like in the ambulance joking with the ambulance crew on the way to the hospital. But I had a full 100% block of my lower ascending thingy figure. They call it a widowmaker. Yeah. So I was lucky to survive, and everything worked out in my favor. But the bill for that hospital stay, between the ambulance and the ER and the stent, ICU, $145,000. Okay, I didn't pay anything. The VA picked it up. Yes, sir.
When it comes to healthcare, if you already have healthcare, like if you have Medicare, for example,
Right.
and you require some kind of healthcare, like you said, heart condition, for example, will the VA step up to cover that, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
If you have other healthcare, the VA will assume the role of a secondary insurer. So anything that your primary insurance doesn't cover, the VA will cover the rest of that.
Do you have to have some kind of a referral from your primary to the VA, or even better, do you have to have some sort of open claim with the VA?
Okay.
How does that work? How do they make the connection?
Once you get evaluated, okay, typically what happens is, let's say you get evaluated for an elbow condition, okay? And that's it. You just have, let's say a 10% rating for your elbow. You can get all your health care at the VA. They will charge a copay okay? But if, let's say you have something more serious, like my heart attack, okay, so we're in the same club. You can get the VA to put you on, community care, okay? So my, cardiologist was not on the list of cardiologists that they use, for community care, but, you know, I just gave them my cardiologist's name. They sent it up to the cardiology clinic, over in La Jolla. They vetted his credentials, and they said, yeah, he's good to go. So now the VA is paying him directly. So you can get community care for your conditions as well. Okay. Education benefits, again, another huge, huge benefit, not only for the student or for the service member who leaves the military, but for their kids. And like I was saying, the state of California is very generous in that they provide that free tuition to anybody who's service connected, even at 0%. So you could have a non-compensable VA disability rating and still get your child into a Cal State, UC, or in college at tuition free, okay? But there's also another thing called Dependents Education Allowance, DEA. So if you happen to get 100% service connected, okay, the VA will make you eligible, they'll grant you that benefit. And that benefit is basically, right now, it's $1,488 a month while your kid's in college, paid directly to your child, tax-free. And there's no, you know, they didn't have to be full-time, but that's about the only caveat. It's a great benefit. I have 2 kids. My daughter's in her last year of medical school. My son's getting ready to start his last year of his master's degree out in Washington, DC. And they both just finally exhausted their benefits. So between the 2 of them, it was over $90,000 that we got, you know, that really helped pay for a lot of their college. Okay, then we got pensions. Pensions typically are something that's a little more difficult to get because it's means tested. So if you have income above what they call a mapper, if you have income above that level, you're not going to be qualified for pension. So that's something that is a really, it's a case-by-case situation there. The home loan guarantee, again, I've used this, it's awesome. It's getting hard to buy houses down in California for the younger folks. But, you know, for those of us that have gotten into it, there are ways to buy a second home using your VA loan, even if you've already used your VA loan and you're still living in that house, believe it or not. So it's crazy.
Wow. Being in California, you count that too.
Yes. And then finally, the burial benefits. You know, I have one client right now, her husband passed away from COPD. She just got granted service connection for his death. So she's getting reimbursed for her burial expenses, where she's gonna end up getting her what we call DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation. That's about $1,600 a month. And that's a big amount of money to help people out. It's really good. Okay, so we'll dig into the VA claims, why things are the way they are right now at the VA. Okay, when I worked at the VA, we were at about 880,000 claims that were pending. Like I said, we worked relentlessly, got those down under 400,000 and kind of stayed the course for a while. And then with the advent of the PAC Act, those claims skyrocketed again. And now they're about 950,000. And it shows a sharp drop there. It was well over 1 million. So there's a lot of claims out there. Now here's what's kind of scary. The VA, the raters, they operate on a production basis, okay? And they're evaluated, their performance evaluations are based upon production standards, okay? So those production standards are how many claims do you get out a day, and each claim is worth a certain amount of points depending on the number of issues that claim has in it. So you have to make your points, and then you have to meet quality, okay? The VA's quality standard is 95%. you can see right there, over the last 3 months, now, this is like for a claim, it could have 10 issues, it could have 1 issue, okay? The VA average right now, over the last 3 months, for quality is 76%. Means 24 out of every 100 claims are leaving the VA with an error. And that's just like incredibly small sample size that the VA uses to rate their quality. I mean, it's ridiculously small. So I would guess that number is really probably closer to 50%. Here's the 12-month claim-based accuracy. Again, the numbers are nowhere near the 95. If I filed a claim today, would I want to be part of that 18% over the last year? No. You know, someone's getting hurt on the back end of that. Okay, so that's, again, it's the worst accuracy in the last 11 years. And 67% of the errors that the VA makes are against the veteran. Okay, the veteran does not benefit from those errors.
Shocking.
I've got one client, that has, the VA has made an error in his favor. We've asked them to correct it. They haven't done that. So, you know,
They're baking cookies.
we'll get to it, when we do. And in the meantime, they're overpaying him, and by law, they cannot ask him to get that pay that money because it's their error. All right, so errors impact your claim throughout the VA system, and it's not just during the rating of it. There's development errors. They don't order the correct exams. I have a client who was at 100%, drawing that nice $1,400 a month allowance for his kid in college, and they reviewed his claim and they knocked him down to 90% and took away the money for college. And after going through his claim, I realized that they used the wrong examination to evaluate his injury. So in doing so, they committed an error, and they have to go back and correct that error. And there's no evidence of record that shows that he needs to be reduced. So they have to reinstate his 100%, have to reinstate that money for his college. So that's one issue. Exam errors. Okay, you would hope that the doctors, nurses, and physician's assistants who do the actual examinations do a good job, but these are doctors and nurses and PAs that are moonlighting. Okay, yes, sir.
On the education part of it, back up a little bit.
Sure.
Does the VA reimburse for past expenses
No.
for school?
Well, it depends on how far back. You might be able to, if for instance, let's say you are granted 100% retroactive 5 years, okay? And you were eligible for those expenses, and you had a son or daughter in college at that time, they were eligible for those benefits, then yes, they would reimburse for that. They would back pay it back. Okay, so exam errors, you know, they're doctors and all, but you know, they don't understand how important their examination report is in relationship to these claims being denied or approved. And so they will think they maybe understand part of the law, but a lot of times they don't. For instance, there's a condition called tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears. Okay, a lot of people have it, especially if, you know, worked on a flight line or in an enclosed environment that was loud, or you worked with explosives or weapons. Very common. The VA has a list of every specialty in each service and the likelihood of military noise exposure for that specialty. Okay, so if you worked on the flight line, like some of us did, your probability of noise exposure is high. The VA has a rule that if you have a high probability of noise exposure, then that alone counts as your in-service event. Okay, the examiners don't understand that. They'll still go through their records and say, oh, well, There's no complaints of hearing loss, no complaints of tinnitus in service, and you didn't complain about it within a year of you leaving. So therefore, you don't have tinnitus that can be service connected. Yeah.
I was gonna just comment on examination errors. I got in a fight with a dog, hit him in his mouth and broke my hand. Went to emergency. Couple days later, they called me back and said, "Hey, you might have dog tooth in your hand." And so, yeah, they miss things.
Yeah. And with the tinnitus, it's really kind of crazy because even though the VA says, hey, if you serve in these career fields, it's basically a presumptive condition, okay? And even though it's not considered presumptive, but they misapply the regulation. And so everybody who's turned down for tinnitus because it wasn't shown in their service treatment records, as long as they were in one of those career fields that's on that list, then they should get tinnitus. Okay, but people don't, they get it and they're like, oh, well, I didn't get approved, so I guess I don't have it. So you can fight those. And then rating errors. I got way too many stories. They're really bad. Even the Board of Veteran Appeals makes mistakes, okay? Because basically what the Board of Veteran Appeals is they're attorneys, okay? And they have the title of Veterans Law Judge. So they're a more skilled evaluator of the law and how the law applies to different cases. And even then, they're not perfect. Okay, so they will make mistakes. And then you can, if you feel there's a mistake, you can appeal that to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, which is not a part of the VA, it's a federal court. Okay, so what kind of compensation is available? You got disability compensation. Okay, and the caveats there are you have to have an illness, death, or injury in service, not all the time. Current diagnosis, absolutely have to have that. And the nexus, the link between the two. If you're within 1 year of your separation date from the military, the nexus really isn't a big deal because they grant all those conditions presumptively. They assume that they were present in service within a year. Then special monthly compensation. This is a added benefit on top of the disability compensation for special situations such as loss of use of a creative organ. Women, if they have a hysterectomy while they're in the military, that's loss of use of creative organ. They're eligible for special monthly compensation for that. If they have a breast cancer or a lump or something like that, they have to have excision or a mastectomy. That's loss of use of a creative organ, and they will they'll get service connected and special monthly compensation. For guys, the most common one is erectile dysfunction. Yes, sir.
On the current diagnosis, disability, does that be connected to service connected?
No, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But if it's not in your service treatment records, it's not a showstopper. And there are ways to prove that it's related to your service. Also, like if people lose a limb, eyesight, hearing, things like that, that's other stuff that is eligible for special monthly compensation. A big one that I'm seeing right now with a lot of my older clients is the need for aid and attendance. You know, folks get old, especially Alzheimer's and dementia, they need assistance all the time. And so they'll put in for aid and attendance. That's a pretty significant benefit. And then finally, there's special circumstances compensation. Like if you need to have a wheelchair ramp built for your house, they'll give an allowance to have your home modified. They'll give, if you are wheelchair bound, they'll give you a special allowance to buy yourself an appropriate vehicle that will allow you to still operate in a special vehicle for your scooter or your wheelchair. Clothing allowances. And then this is a big one, individual unemployability. I just had a gentleman, 85 years old, guy was working at Lowe's, okay? 85, okay? And, you know, he was at 10%, the VA had screwed him up for, since 1990. And we got everything worked out. He could no longer work because of issues that he was service connected for, but he was only at 80% disability. But we were able to get him approved for individual unemployability, which grants him the compensation at 100%. It grants him the education benefits for his kids. Now his kids are 50, so they're not gonna be able to do it. But we got him hooked up, and he got a $55,000 back pay. And then DIC, this is important for spouses who lost their spouse to a condition that they either was service connected or was eligible for service connection. And this is where a lot of people miss out on benefits because they don't understand that sometimes the laws change, like the PAC Act made it a much larger pool of people eligible for service connection for Agent Orange exposure, for instance. And people maybe filed claims for disability indemnity compensation previously, and they were turned down because their spouse did not have the requisite service in the requisite area at the requisite time to be eligible for it. But now, because of the PAC Act, they are. So we can put in for the benefit, and by law, the VA has to back pay them all the way back to when their original claim for service connection for this benefit, this DIC, was filed. I have a client right now, two clients. One, her original claim was in 2007, and she got turned down. We just got her approved now. They initially gave her a compensation check for $32,000 in back pay that only went back to the date of the beginning of the PAC Act, which is wrong. They needed to pay her back to 2007, so she's got another couple $100,000 coming in. Okay, so the methods that can be service connected, there's direct and most, yes, sir.
Yes, recently I applied for aid in attendance. Will that have any bearing on getting 100%?
Aid in attendance basically pays you at a level higher than the 100% level. It gives you a lot of extra benefit because of the need for the extra expense that's necessary for aid in attendance. So it doesn't do anything to like take it away or anything. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is the VA's position to deny claims, or
No.
are they trying to be fair or not?
I'm gonna be completely blunt, okay? When I worked at the VA regional office here in San Diego, we had 85% of the employees at the regional office were veterans. We were not interested in turning people down. I got excited when it was like, oh, okay, here's a favorable medical opinion. I can hook this person up. I really liked hooking up what we call special operators, Navy SEALs, get a few claims for those. You want to make sure you take care of them. But the mantra at the VA was deny if you must, grant if you can, deny if you must. Okay. That's still the mantra, but they have a really inexperienced staff nationwide. And it's not that they're trying to make mistakes or trying to deny you. It's just they don't know what they don't know, and they're not applying the law properly, and it's impacting people like us. Yes, sir. I'll get you next.
Thanks again for your service, David, and making this understandable for a dumb New England farm boy. But what would you say is the, we've heard, I don't have to be a vet to know that there's been a lot of nightmare stories out there of what has been going wrong with the VA. What would you say is the most common denominator of what goes wrong with all these claims, of all these men and ladies that have worked so hard, for these things?
I would say the biggest denominator on mistakes and denials, erroneous denials, is lack of experience on the rating side. When I left, there was a lot of people that left at the same time. I had lunch on Monday, with a colleague who still works at the VA. And, we were talking and she's like, she goes, Dave, she goes, there's another big wave of seasoned VA employees who are getting ready to call it quits. Because they just don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. It's so bad. They can be great graders, but they're dragged down by the lowest grader.
Burnout.
Yeah, and they get burned out, exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I heard recently that Social Security is best to file in person, otherwise things get lost. Is that true with VA as well, to file your claim in person?
No, I wouldn't recommend that because I think that is probably the easiest way to get your claim lost. Because you're dealing with paper product, okay? We do everything electronically. We directly submit our claims to the VA wirelessly. It's completely, digital signatures, the whole 9 yards.
It's your.
But we get a verification number, a claim ID number from the VA once that claim is received at the VA, so we know they have it. And then we get verification along the way that it's, okay, now the claim is in the records. There's actually what they call an EP assigned to it, which is the end product. So we can check and make sure that it's there. It typically takes about 3 days from the time that we submit something to the time that we know it's in the system. And we can actually lay our eyes on it and see that it's in the system. Okay? Okay, so that direct, if it happened to you in service, you're going to claim it direct. Secondary is a big deal. It's a really big deal. If you have a service-connected condition, let's say you have a hip problem, or your right hip is bad, and it's service-connected, but all of a sudden you start having problems with your left ankle and your left knee. Well, oftentimes those kinds of injuries that happen afterwards are based upon compensating for your hip injury, let's say. So you can get service connected for those on a secondary basis. And that requires a medical opinion. The VA will provide, exams and will provide medical opinions, but you don't want to rely on the VA for your medical opinion. Aggravation, if you have a pre-existing condition when you came in, for instance, I had a gentleman who had acne. And he was at the clinic all the time for acne, and he never claimed it. And so it's like, well, let's claim acne, and we'll see if we can get you some money. So we ended up getting him 20% evaluation for the scars that he had from the acne, based upon all the treatment he got. So it's aggravated. And then finally, the presumptive conditions. These are the things like Agent Orange. In the Gulf right now, it's a number of cancers, a number of gastrointestinal issues from the Gulf War. A lot of respiratory conditions are considered presumptive now because of the PAC Act. So, but again, this is dependent upon having to serve in a certain location during a certain period of time, and you have to be able to prove that you're there. Okay, how long does it take to get your VA claim process? Disability claims, typically 150 to 270 days. I would say right now, even though they advertise about 156, 158 days, I would say it's closer to like 175. And the hard part about this is that the VA works a lot with contractors in order to do their examinations. Okay, so they work with companies called QTC, Oil Source, Veterans Evaluation System. These are all contractors, and the contractors get paid when they do the exams. So when the VA orders an examination, that contractor is on top of it, okay? Because they're making $1,000, $800 to $1,000 per examination. So they want that person in, they want to get that exam done, and they want to get paid. So the exams get done very quickly in the VA process. And then you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And there's very little you can do. But it's most frustrating because that claim is sitting there ready to rate, and the VA is not taking any action on it because it just simply hasn't been in the system long enough. There's a queue, and it's at the bottom of the queue. Okay, DIC and pension and individual employability, again, about 100, probably more like 150 days there. Okay, claims can be expedited, so you can get head of the line privileges, if you will. If you're 85 years old or older, okay, that's with the VA. Now, if you have an appeal that goes to the Board of Veteran Appeals, that age limit drops down to 75. Okay. If you're terminally ill, and I've had clients who are terminally ill, and I've gotten them rated within a month. Okay, it's very quick. Financial hardship, homelessness, and severe injury are also other things that can be expedited. Okay, things that keep me awake at night, besides my neighbor's dog. The Veterans Benefit Administration only has a 70% retention rate on claims processing personnel from the date of hire over a 2-year period. So every 2 years, they're churning 30% of their workforce, okay? And I can tell you as a VA employee, it took me literally a couple of years before I felt confident that I could work on my own and not have to ask questions of my mentors, which to the day I left, I still ask questions of my mentors because you don't see everything until you see everything. So there's a lot of very new employees. Burnout. Yeah, no, the pay is good. The VA pay is good. When I started the VA, I started out as a GS9, which was a pay cut for me. And at the time, this is back in 2010, it was like $55,000 a year. When I left the VA, I was GS12 and I was making 6 figures. And so most of your seasoned raters are GS12s and they're making 105, 110,000 a year. So there's good money to be made there. VBA also has the lowest personnel levels against their authorization. So imagine if somebody tells you, hey, you can have 10,000 people processing these claims. And they're like, okay, but we're only gonna hire 8,000. So they don't fill up all their authorizations. And then job stress is the #1 reason for leaving. The VA disability benefits and healthcare are so critically important. Okay, you really want to get those things. Unless you have access to your actual CMP exams, you'll never know if you're underrated. Okay, you can do that through a FOIA request, but it'll take 6 months for you to get those. VSOs and accredited attorneys have that access, okay, but you got to know what you're looking at. VSOs are, they're not as well trained as your attorneys and accredited agents. Okay, so we already talked about this. Okay, what can I do if I think the VA has made a mistake? Don't go down the ship. Appeal. Deadlines. You got 1 year to appeal an original decision. Through the normal process. You have another year to do a VA EVA decision. This is how long claims take at the Board of Veteran Appeals. This 314 days if you don't provide any new evidence, you let the judge make the decision. 927 days, that's if you want to have a hearing. Okay, so success rates. The attorneys obviously have a much higher success rate than the VSOs because they're just got a better knowledge of the law. Okay, so VSOs, they do a great service for people, but they don't at times do a great service for people. They are undertrained, overworked, and they really are just a middleman for submitting forms. Okay, they don't really know how the laws apply. And accredited attorneys obviously have a different level of knowledge. Okay, so that brings us to me. I work at the Veterans Legal Center. It's a veteran-owned and operated firm that represents clients before the VA. VA accredited attorneys, so everything's above board. It's not one of these money grab things. We have right now, I would say we have well over 20 years of experience working within the VA system on staff, and then another 40 years of litigation experience. We have a full legal team, attorneys, paralegals, consultants, network of providers for independent medical opinions. We do free representation on anything. Well, I never turn down a client. Because oftentimes, even if I think that, okay, it's gonna be a pro bono case, we end up being able to get that person back pay for a mistake that was previously made, and they just didn't know it. And then finally, representation on appeals, we get 20% of the retroactive back pay one time. And then there's no fee unless we win. So we're not making any money unless the client is actually winning their case. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I tried to get a claim a couple of years ago, failed horribly. Then Craig, and thank you, Craig, introduced me to you. And just to let you guys know, David answers his phone, he returns texts, and he gives you updates. And he guides you along the way completely, and just thank you, man.
Oh,
for taking
I
me
appreciate that. Thank you. No, it's only because you're Air Force. All my names are her. No, I appreciate your time this morning. If you have any questions, I'll be here for a few minutes. Yes, sir.
What do you say to the person? I feel good, I'm tired. I don't even bother with this.
I always tell my clients, like, if they're going in for their C&P exam, they filed a claim, they're going in to have their examination done. I do a pre-brief with the client a day or two prior to their examination, because they need to know how to communicate their symptoms to the examiners. And so I always tell them, you're going in there and you're describing your worst day possible with that condition. You know, if you have a flare up in your back and you're immobilized, you let the doctor know.
It's not that easy. You know, people just don't understand. You know, I have an hour, you gotta connect it. You know, honestly, and he's being too gracious against the VA. Generally, they're not pro-veteran. Used to be, I would say about 5 years ago, there was a change of attitude. And if you get an initial denial, try to get it overturned. Because they'll say, well, I got denied here, I'll deny it again. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because they do all the prior evaluating. He's being very gracious, okay, and I've been at it for 40 years. Change of attitude 5 years ago, because very negative, okay? They're supposed to be pro-veteran, you know, when in doubt, they'll give you benefit. It's not what I'm saying, I'm just not saying it. So you have to prove your case, overprove it, do it once, do it right. Here's the problem. If you don't get good advice, look, I've been at it for 40 years. Come on, 40, folks. Okay, 40. And what I've learned is if you don't get it right the first time, they will use that to deny it. You know, it's like going in front of a judge. If the judge denied it the first time, you're gonna have a real problem changing their mindset. You may be dead right, but you didn't prove your case, and they get to say, well, if I denied the first time, it must have been a reason. And folks, people are human. Look, they're human. They're human. I joke in my office where I say, hey, make it easy for the judge to rule in your favor. What? Make it easy for the judge to rule in your favor. That sounds simple. It ain't simple. You know, don't assume there's nothing obvious. I joke around my thing. Nothing's obvious. You know, you'd say, well, this is obvious. It's not obvious. The judge hasn't had their cup of coffee. They haven't fighting with their wife. Or she hasn't fighting with husband.
Black tire.
So what I'm trying to tell you, listen, and I'm giving you very, very solid, good advice. Go to an expert.
Yes.
Hire an expert. In the long run, it's cheaper. Everybody says, well, I'm gonna save money. You're not. When you go buy shoes, buy the most expensive shoes. If they cost you $200, you'll wear them for the next 20 years. You buy the little cheapos, you know, they're in the toilet after 6 months. So what I'm saying is, he's making it sound easy because he is an expert. He's an expert. I mean, he can look at this stuff and he says, by the way, some of the things people don't understand. I'm gonna steal your thunder here. Yeah, right. There's the PAC Act. That means that there's presumptive conditions. So if you've been denied before, right? And there's a PAC Act where there's presumption. Well, the very case where you get denied, the PAC Act now says it's presumptively you got it. So, you know, and when you have a doubt, when in doubt, what? better call Kruger, no, better call David. What I'm trying to say is, you don't know that you don't know. And I'm telling you, get on the phone and call and say, hey, what do you think about this, folks? I'm just telling you, listen, here's the deal. The government makes a deal with you. They said, if you get injured, we will pay. Now, trust me, they have no problem putting you in a body bag. Okay, they have no problem. They'll put your dog tag in your mouth and put a little dog tag on your big toe and have a nice life. They'll give you your SGLI insurance and have a nice life. And you get a barrel and a little salute. That's the deal you cut. That is the deal you cut with the government. So you make them pay on the deal. That's all you're doing. Because they have no problem burying you. There's a padre here who said, yeah, you probably do internments, right? Okay, well, you know how it works. So listen, this is the deal they cut. I'm not saying it's a good deal, not a bad deal, but the government wants you to go out and fight. And so that's what the deal they cut. Take advantage of your benefits. Lord our God, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for educating us and making us wise so that we can benefit and get the VE benefits so that we can actually tithe more. Like that. Lord, put your hedge of protection over these people as they go forth this week to do your work and to your glory. In Jesus Christ's name.
Amen.
You're very welcome. Yeah, just go ahead.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a great day.
So.